All right, let's start. So we already asked this question. So what is the Cloud Run? And then we hear that it's basically a platform that allows us to run stateless containers. I mentioned that it's possible to actually have some sort of a state, but it will be temporary because the nature of the Cloud Run is that you are having your application scaling up and scaling down, even down to zero, which means that containers are dropped, right? So they are not always active. So that's why I'm saying that you can have some sort of a state and you can create an application or service that will never be scaled to zero. So we will be able to hold the state, but by design, it's stateless. And the nice feature about Cloud Run is also that if you have, because our colleague mentioned that if you have a container, you can then run it in the Cloud Run. That's of course correct. But if you don't have a container, that's fine as well, right? If you are using in your application some sort of languages that are supported by our build packs, for one of the popular languages like Go, Node.js, Python, Java, and .NET Core or Ruby, you can actually deploy directly from you can use something that is called source-based deployment. So basically, if you have your application in a repository, you can just point it out. You can log into the Cloud Console and point out your application code, and the build back will take care of the rest. It will build a container out of your code based on some sort of predefined principles in those build packs. I'm not saying that it works 99% of times, but for some application, I was testing that out actually for a few of my application, and it works, right? If your application is not very sophisticated in a sense of configuration, you can just point to your application code, and it will create a container automatically and deploy your application. Okay, and who knows why it's nice to use Cloud Run? It's not nice, right? No, I'm joking. Okay, so it's nice because it's a managed infrastructure, right? You are basically eligible and it's possible for you to run your application directly from source code or with a container that you already have in a Google Cloud Managed Service solution, right? So it's easier. It's faster because you don't need to configure the Kubernetes cluster. You don't need to deal with the infrastructure configuration, right? You have just your container or your application. You are throwing it into the Cloud Run and magic happens and it works, right? So that's one positive way. Second is scalability, right? So because the nature, like your container works on the same kind of environment as other regular containers in the Kubernetes clusters. This is the same runtime environment. It means that basically all the principles about the scalability applies here as well, right? So we can scale your application. You can run multiple instances out of your application or your container and scale that based on the configuration that you use for the deployment. And this scalable principle applies for the services. I will tell what are the Cloud Run services and jobs in the next slide. I believe it will explain some of the situations here. And it's also easy to parallelize. Parallelize is like something new that I will, as I mentioned, explain in the next slide. But basically, it allows you to, again, scale and do the parallel work for your tasks that usually you do. Like if you have some sort of a deployments that just you are running them on a particular given moments, then you can use Cloud Run jobs to use those tasks and parallelize the work. So basically speed up the outcome, right? And flexibility, of course, right? So flexibility in multiple senses, basically, because Cloud Run gives you by design access to all the integrations available in the Cloud Run. So like integrations to like multiple databases, basically multiple types of storages, right? Databases, cloud storage. You have access right away to all the APIs available for the languages that I mentioned it in the previous slide within Cloud Run environment. So we can automatically connect to them. So flexibility is one of the positive here as well. And you just need to take care of your code, basically, right? Like the environment is already there waiting for you and working. Do you hear me? Is it working? Okay. Right. Okay, so now this promised explanation a little bit, right? So if any one of you already used Cloud Run, then you never heard like Cloud Run services, something new. Cloud Run jobs. Cloud Run jobs is the reason for this presentation, but Cloud Run services is basically something that was called Cloud Run so far, right? So if you are confused, like Cloud Run services doesn't ring a bell. So Cloud Run services is something that you may know as a Cloud Run so far. So now, of course, when we do new announcements, new feature releases, sometimes we change the names. You know that, right? G Suite, Google Workspace. Sometimes happens, right? And we just need to educate people what's going on here. So Cloud Run so far, which was launched in 2019, so you may have used that already. It's a Cloud Run services, and if you see in the documentation Cloud Run services, you can think like, okay, old Cloud Run. And Cloud Run jobs is something that was released this year in May. Cloud Run jobs, as I was mentioning, there is like a very, very high level explanation what is one and what is another. But basically Cloud Run jobs is something that you can do for, that you can use if you have some sort of repetitive tasks that starts and finishes and do some sort of a job, but they don't need to run all the time, right? So why this was created? Why we need that, right? So we already noticed, like as my colleagues previously mentioned it, like as every service we are hearing and listening the feedback, right? So there are many feedbacks. Okay, we have those Cloud Run services, and we can run our applications with the HTTP endpoint. We can do some fancy stuff there, but it's not actually finishing, right? Like the Cloud Run services are meant to run, right? Like to not scale to zero. It's possible, but for a simple tasks work, it was used in that way, but we needed to have something very different, like something that will not exactly always have HTTPS endpoint, which is the case for Cloud Run services, right? So you have a job, you want to do that, or maybe schedule that to do somewhere in the future. That's it. I don't want to remember about that. I don't need to be afraid that my Cloud Run service have HTTP endpoint, and I don't know, maybe someone will do some bad things with that HTTP endpoint. So by design, Cloud Run jobs are just jobs to do. They don't have any way of interaction, replying to requests. They're just doing the job that you program them to do. Okay, so now a little bit more differentiation, right? So when I was telling what are those services, like Cloud Run services, and why and when we should use them, right? So Cloud Run services are actually meant to be used as a solution for simple web services, right? Web services, website, web applications, something that accept the HTTPS traffic, able to process that information and respond with some sort of information. API microservices, right? REST API, very popular, right? You can deploy that in the Cloud Run and it will just work, right? You don't need to take care of any infrastructure. You are just putting your API as a code in the container and it will be serving on the Cloud Run service. Streaming data processing, this is something that is kind of one of the use cases for the Cloud Run services. So if you have some sort of a message processing, right? So incoming messages, incoming events, as you see, pops up is here, push notifications. This is something that you can use Cloud Run services as well because it interacts with the events and HTTP traffic. So these are the, of course, not closed. It's not the closed list, right? Your imagination is a sky limit. So you can use probably Cloud Run services for everything else. But this is like some sort of the suggestions to help you understand better why Cloud Run services. Okay. So speaking about Cloud Run services, what it is. So as I was mentioning, you have your container or your code. The container is being created. You have your service, right, which is running in the Cloud Run. and you have your client who is like sending a web request, because when you're deploying your service into the container with your image that you already have, or you are building out of the cloud source code, your client is sending the request to the HTTPS endpoint, which is created always when you deploy I say that again, always whenever you deploy something on the Cloud Run service, you will get the HTTP endpoint to interact with your service. So once the web request is coming in, your application is doing something with that and replying to that request, right? And as you see here, there is this thing that I was mentioning, scalability, right? So what's the beauty of Cloud Run? So the beauty of Cloud Run is that you can deploy your service, and you can deploy it in a way that you will not have your CPU allocated all the time. So basically, if there is no request coming, so as I was mentioning, you always have this HTTPS endpoint created for your application. And this is very interesting, because you can deploy your application in a way that if you are not getting any request to your application, no one is requesting this HTTP endpoint or sending any type of request to that HTTP endpoint, your application may scale to zero. Scale to zero means that you are not paying anything, right? You can just have your application there, just waiting for incoming traffic, but you are not paying anything, right? And when the request is coming in, then the whole Cloud Run infrastructure on the backend, you don't need to do anything, brings up your container and starting to reply to those requests that are coming in from the client, right? So that's the beauty. Of course, there is a way to have always container up and running, but it will not scale to zero, which means that even if there is no traffic, you will pay some sort of money for keeping this application and service alive. Okay, a little bit more information about like another beauty of Cloud Run services. So as I was saying, the following path of the scalability functionality of Cloud Run services, how it works. So you have your application. We saw that in the previous slide. You have your container, and suddenly you can, of course, it's all depend how you deploy your application. But by default, you can specify the number of instances of your application, that maximum number of instances of your application that you want to bring on if there is like a heavy traffic coming, right? So by design, if you deploy just application without any scalability, it will spin up only one instance, and this one instance will serve all the responses to incoming traffic. But actually, the beautiful way about the scalability in the Cloud Run service is that we have this internal load balancing. It's again, you don't need to configure that. It's given by default when you deploy your application. And if you specify that you are accepting your application to scale or spin up like up to 10, 15, or 500 instances, it will do that automatically. You don't need to do anything based on the incoming traffic, right? So that's the beautiful thing. And as you see here, you can spin up maximum up to 1,000 instances to handle your incoming traffic, right? And it will scale up based on the traffic and scale down when there is no traffic, right? So it's the beauty of this service that, you know, you are paying when you are like pay as you use, right? If you use, then you are paying. If you are not using, then you are not paying. Another nice feature with the Cloud Run, which is coming very handy, very, very easy to use, is like, imagine, you know, we are living in a world where our services, application, and code constantly changing, right? So we most of the time deploy something that tomorrow will need to change. And we don't know if this change will actually work as intended or not work as intended. So if you are like a developer and you created applications so far, you know the concept of A/B testing, right? Like we need to compare if the new version of application will work as we intended. We change something and we just need to test it out. So instead of like testing on the production, We can use this revisions traffic split, right? We can configure our new application, like new version of application, new revision deployment to just accept 10% of traffic, 5% of traffic, 1% of traffic, and test it out. Observe the logs or checking the monitoring and observing is it working as intended? If not, you can immediately switch back to the previous version. If like you test it out and you can using small steps, you can increase the traffic that will be routed to your new revision. Once you hit the 100%, and you will see like, okay, no issues, then that's done, right? You have a easy way of testing something on a real traffic, right? Because, as we know, life creating best scenarios. So sometimes this testing on a production, this might be one of the solutions to do that, right? So this is about the Cloud Run services, right? And I was mentioning that the key message today was that we just announced the Cloud Run jobs. So what are the Cloud Run jobs and when to use them? So Cloud Run jobs, as I was mentioning, is like a piece of code that do something. Like you have some sort of a job to do, which is happening from time to time, or you want to schedule it and happen it at a given point of time, or you want to trigger it to happen. So as it's mentioned it here, like 3 possible use cases is to have a script or tool which you will just initiate from time to time that will do some piece of work or will do some magic for you. RI job is something that I will explain in the next step, but basically it's explaining this concept of parallelism of Cloud Run jobs. So basically, if you have some sort of a task to do on a multiple things, like multiple files, yeah, and it's actually no blocker for you to parallelize this action, right? No, you don't need to do like, if you have like 1,000 files, you don't need to do like first file, second file, third file. This will take ages, right? You can instead of parallelize your job, right? So run multiple instances of your job simultaneously and process those files at the same time, like for example, 500 files at once, right? So that's basically the concept of RI job. It will be on the next slide again to visualize what I'm trying to explain. And of course, scheduled job, right? When we are developing applications or working on a daily basis, there is some sort of things that we want to do from time to time on a particular event or we want to trigger that manually. So this is also a use case for that, right? So this is the difference that I was mentioning, that when there was no Cloud Run jobs, people were using Cloud Run services for that, right? So it's not quite the use case for Cloud Run services. It will work. The difference is the use case, basically, right? And you don't have a HTTP endpoint here. It's just like you have like your container with the code and the program job to do, maybe with the interactions with a Cloud SQL or Cloud Storage to do some kind of things there. It's doing the job, and it's closing scaling to 0 the container, and then again you are not paying anything for that, right? Cloud Run RI jobs. What is it? So as I was saying, like let's imagine that you have like 1,000 files to process, right? Like, and it's happening every day. So instead of, and for example, you know that because you have, your task written, and you know that, you have some sort of simple iteration in your code, and it's processing one file after another, right? So it will take definitely longer time, right? You have like one job, second job, third job, running one after another, processing another files. So RI job is something that is easy to be used in a Cloud Run jobs. So basically, you define the parallelization counter, which will indicate how many instances of your container will be spin up to process the job that you coded behind the container, right? And we'll do that simultaneously. So as a result, you will have a shorter time of the data processing. that will be everything about the beauty of Cloud Run. That's the moment for the demo. So I will like the plan for demo will be that I will show you what are the real life scenario of using Cloud Run services and Cloud Run jobs together, right? So here we have a very simple, I will come back to that when I will do the demo, but we have a simple architecture which is using the Cloud Run services and jobs. So as you see, we have something called Uploader. This is a Cloud Run service. We have cloud storage here, where we are storing the invoices. And we have Approver, which is another Cloud Run service. We have Processor, which is Cloud Run job. And we have invoice data, which is basically here Firestore. And what it does. So basically, the idea behind this sample use case is that we have a vendor, right? We are working in companies, and sometimes we need to accept an invoice from a vendor, and someone need to review that invoice, check what's the amount to be paid to the vendor, and someone need to do the payment, right? Or review the payment. Is it valid with what we requested from the vendor or not? So that's basically what's going on here. We are uploading the invoices. They are ending up in the storage. Then our processor is checking the document AI behind this code, is checking the invoice, extracting the information about the company name, extracting the information about the amount to be paid, storing that information in the Firestore, and then our approver, which is another actor in our sample architecture, is checking those ingested information from the invoices and making the decision. Is it approved to be paid or not? Once he approved this information going back to the Firestore with the information, this invoice is approved to be paid and can be processed to the, for example, accounting team to be paid. Okay, so without further ado, let's do the presentation. Let me change the way how I present. It will be easier. All right. Now I will stand. All right. So I was as I was saying, let's check. We have a Cloud Run service uploader, right? So in the this is the UI of the Cloud Run, right? You may be familiar with that. So now there are those two tabs over here, which are indicating. Is it big enough, or it's too small? Okay. Great. Okay, so we have those services here, and as you see, I have two services deployed already. So this indicate the uploader, right, and the approver service, right? Reviewer and uploader, and we have jobs, and we have here the one job, which is invoice processing, and this job is the processor here, right? Okay, so let's do the magic, right? And don't laugh, the UI of those web services, those applications will be stunning. So let's do the magic. So just to show you, as we are using a cloud storage bucket, this will be the cloud storage bucket that we use for the demo. As you see, it's empty. We don't have anything here. So let's follow the process. So first thing that we need to do, we need to get some invoices, right? So we have our magic beautiful UI to upload the invoices, right? Stunning UI. So let's play some. Let's put some invoices into the storage bucket. This is the Cloud Run service, right? So this is a web application, which is just doing a simple thing as taking the files, creating a folder on the storage, and pushing those files into the storage, right? So we did that already. Let's check if something has changed here in the storage bucket. Nothing has changed. Of course, maybe submit, right? That will be a good way to do that. Okay, uploaded 3 files. Check it out. We will have a folder here. Yes, we have incoming folder. We have those files here. Now we need to move to the next stage, which will be the processing stage, right? So we have our beautiful Cloud Run job, but like how to initiate it, right? Like I I have my job defined here. I need to always go there, click execute. So yes, this is definitely one way to do that, to process those things. But the another thing is that we can, of course, schedule this, right? Since it will be a repetitive tasks, we can schedule a very familiar to everyone cloud scheduler. We can use that and specify if we are familiar with the cron. So I'm setting it here right now to run this job every midnight. But I can also initiate this job from here. So let's force the run job because we will not wait till the midnight, right? And let's see what's going on here. Let's click on the job. We see that it's being initiated, right? It should take around like 20 seconds. So in the backend, what it does right now, so this invoice processing job is initiating the document AI, which is taking the one file, PDF file from the storage bucket, processing it with the document AI, extracting the information about the company name, about the invoice price to be paid, and some other nice things. We see that it worked. So let's check if our Cloud Firestore have this information. So as we see, we have no information here as of now. Let's refresh it. It's supposed to create a new collection. Yes, we do. We have that. We have all those 3 invoices processed, and we have this information about the extraction that was happening on the backend by the cloud service job, which extracted the information about the due date for the payment when the invoice was created. What's the status? This will be required for the next step, which is reviewing the invoices to be paid, and of course the total amount of money that we need to pay to that particular company. Okay, so we have this information here. Now let's go back to our second service, which is, as I was saying, it's approver, right? A reviewer, I'm sorry. So we have a reviewer service, another stunning UI. So as you see, this is a beautiful UI for the second service. Let's refresh it. Let's see what's happening over here. Basically what it's happening right now, it's collecting the information from the Firestore and showing us like, hey, these are the invoices that come since last Cloud Run job. What we're gonna do, so you can of course check it out, how the invoice look like, right? That's the invoice. And you can approve or not. So let's of course approve because we are very generous. And they are gone from here. And where they appeared, so they appeared here in the folder called approved, which can be later verified by the account process, accountant process or some automation that was basically sending the payment to the companies. And with that beautiful moment, that will be everything for the demo, which was very, very interactive, as you see. And I'm opening the floor for the questions.